Ryan,
Toni, and Crystal.
We can't guarantee that you're gonna look great, but if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits. That's right, man. Tell 'em.
welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Toni Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Toni, a registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits.
So how was your trip to Chicago? Why were you in Chicago?
Why was I in Chicago? Well, if you look at our Instagram, you'll see.
I don't use Instagram.
Okay, yeah. Well, there was a Star Wars celebration, they call it. They do it
Nice.
every year, every couple of years. And so this year's in Chicago. So it was just like a big Star Wars fan expo, I
Nice.
guess, like Comic-Con for Star Wars. So it was fun. So I had a good time.
Nice, awesome. How'd you eat when you were there?
Bad. It was in Chicago. I ate just pizza every day, I think, to try a few of the different pizza places. So I tried, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but Piquods or something like that. And then was it Giordani's or something like that?
That one sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's something like that. I don't know. I'm not pronouncing them properly at all, but good pizza. No, I still prefer New York. Our style of pizza much better, but still not bad. Just very filling. A lot of cheese.
Yeah, it's filling.
And they're the deep dishes, right? So they're all very thick. The
Yeah, very thick,
it's
thick
gotta be
crust.
filling.
It takes like when you get there, they tell you like the one place was like 45 minutes, the other was like an hour. So basically, like you're not gonna have your pizza for a while.
They make
so
it fresh.
So that
It's good.
And because it's so thick, it takes time. So that means then you got to order snacks. So
Yeah, of course.
It's just not.
It's a good method.
Huh?
It's a good method
Yeah.
for a restaurant. So did you watch GOT?
Yes, I did. Did you watch it?
I did not. I
Yeah,
did not.
no.
I'm saving up to binge.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to avoid all the spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was good. I'll be talking about that on the pop culture podcast that I'm on, Cynic Radio podcast. We'll be doing our Game of Thrones reviews every week.
I feel it's very difficult for an epic show to have a last season, that it's always a bit of a letdown. So what I think they're going to do is, because the story is winding down, so they can't have as many plot twists and turns, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like they're going to try to fill it up with like big budget scenes and crazy fights and stuff like that to make it just thrilling at the end. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, you're right. I think for any show, it's hard to kind of tie it up in a way that's satisfying. The benefit for Game of Thrones is most of their best episodes have been around big set piece battles. Like they between the showrunners and the different directors they've had, they've seemed to really get it right when they're with those big momentous battles. Like if you really look at, like if you list like the 10 best episodes, like I'd say 7 out of those 10 are going to be things that were around big massive set pieces and battles.
But a lot of it
good. They get the drama and they get it. So I think in that way we'll get some good stuff there.
Cool.
I think the fear though is there's going to be a letdown. Like and I think as a fan of the show and someone who I read the books after seeing the first couple seasons, the books are really nuanced, and I think it feels like the last couple seasons they've been really kind of rushing to an ending. And since they passed the books, it's really like kind of George R.R. Martin fan fiction. And so sometimes they're always on this line of feeling like, okay, they really have a good grasp of what they're doing. And then other times where it feels like they're writing some fan fiction and it's pretty clear. So, my hope is that they can kind of stay on the line, on the side where you're doing a really good job and not making it fan fiction-y. I won't give anything away, but, first episode's solid, but kind of has to reintroduce characters that we haven't, seen in 2 years.
I would look, it doesn't have to, for me, it doesn't have to be great to solidify the show as an all-time great. I think it just has to be a solid last season.
You got to stick the landing, I think.
You think so? Okay, all right. So you're challenging. You're saying to be on that level, it's got Breaking Bad's last season was not great.
I thought it was great.
I thought it was solid. I think that they knew when to cut ties, and they did it. I don't think it was great, and I thought the last episode, I didn't love it, but I thought it was okay.
I thought it was great.
All right, so we're having multiple debates in one episode.
9.5 out of 10.
Oh, wow, okay. All right.
Maybe 9 out of 10. But again, it is tough to end a show. But I think that last season was strong.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
One
more quick thing. Just a quick congratulations to Dustin Poirier, who won the UFC lightweight interim title by defeating the unbeatable recently Max Holloway, even though he's up a weight class. And I think there's a good lesson to be learned from this, that Dustin has been around for a while, and I guess he was never touted as like the next big thing, although he was very popular, and just through sort of sheer hard work and determination, now he got himself an interim title. And I think that's a great lesson for everyone that you don't. We're always so used to like the newest, hottest thing and this up and comer, and this is going to be the great, right? If you stick with it, right, over time, you can really achieve your goals. And congratulations to Dustin.
Cool. Okay.
All right, so
but speaking of that card, I had maybe the fight of the year with Stylebender and Gastelum.
I got to rewatch the
that fight was one of the best fights I've ever seen. So.
Nice.
All right.
Cool,
Anyway,
cool.
for our MMA fan,
yeah,
sure
right,
happy,
fan. Yeah.
but on to other things.
All right, so the main point of the episode today is we are going to have a debate, and the debate is whether or not eating healthy is cost effective. So hold on one sec, guys.
What the heck is that?
I need my little
Well, first,
my
the
little thing
motion
to help
would
out.
be.
I just love how he brings out a visual, but we're on audio.
So first of all, the motion would be eating healthy is cost prohibitive. So that's
cost
what we're going to
prohibitive,
argue. We'll kind of argue the different sides of that. Since for people who can't see, Justin brought out some stick with beads on it.
It's a club. It's like an old school club. In paying my respects to Game of Thrones, I felt like having a medieval style weapon.
It
to
literally
hold
looks medieval style.
while we have the debate would add some nice ambiance to the debate.
Right. Since we're not putting this on YouTube.
Justin's 2 for 2 today, making me laugh. If you guys didn't see before we recorded, but either way, I'm dying. Okay.
What was I here? I wasn't here then.
No,
it's. Oh wait, I was here.
No, you
No,
weren't.
I
We
wasn't.
were
It was
waiting
just before
for you.
Ryan arrived.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were waiting for you. And if you guys follow our Instagram and you watch the story, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Justin was basically like, if you're seeing my face for the first time, I'm sorry. And I was like, where did that come from?
All right.
Anyways.
So, as usual, I may or may not take sides in this debate, as I will be the moderator. So let's open the floor. I'm going to have Ryan start off today. Is eating healthy cost prohibitive?
So my argument will be yes, and obviously there's context and there's a lot involved. I think to me, I think the big issue there are, Justin, stop. Come on, people can't see what you're doing. So, anyway, I think there are a number of issues. Obviously, if you the better off you are, the more well off you are. If you're upper class, upper middle class, it's gonna be easier to make those changes, but still not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. But especially for lower income people, it is cost prohibitive to eat healthy. I think for a number of reasons that I'm sure we'll get into. But I think there's obviously just straight up there's the cost, which if it's nominal, but it adds up. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive to eat healthy, but it's something that does add up. But beyond that, there are other things surrounding it, whether it's time, whether it's knowledge. There are issues with kind of even the kind of industry and the government kind of subsidizing farming that involves things that like corn and wheat and things that do go into heavily processed foods. We have a kind of system that values processed foods over kind of farming, over just regular farming. So I think there's just a lot of factors involved that just make eating healthy a challenge and cost prohibitive.
All right, Tone, your introduction.
No, I do not believe it is cost prohibitive because I believe we all get, no matter actually what class you're in, no matter how much money you make, we all have certain values. And I think that when you put your money toward your values and you prioritize the things that matter most in life, there's always going to be a return, and it's going to be cost effective in the long run. So yes, so certain foods might be cheaper than others, but when you purchase for quality versus like the quantity that you're spending right then and there, chances are you'll probably feel more satiated, so you'll eat within your calorie needs. You won't overeat. I mean, I'm not even talking about long-term effects of having to pay for hospital bills later and medications and, quality of life, and there's so many other things. But in the short term, you may or may not be spending a little bit more money, but at the end of the day, I honestly think it's all relative. I think that when you put your money towards the things that matter, you might sacrifice and you might have to not spend money on certain clothes or whatever have you, but it's at the end of the day, it's all about prioritization.
All right, so the first topic I want to discuss is that of produce, fresh fruits and vegetables, or we can even discuss frozen or canned vegetables and fruits. So that's often, when we talk about being healthy, that is one of the most important things. We talk about getting enough vegetables, enough greens, enough fruits into our diet. Mm-hmm. So now we know that purchasing fresh produce, even though Whole Foods now recently has cut their prices, which I think is really good. I went in there and I was looking at the produce and I was like, oh, this seems a lot more reasonable than it was. Maybe it was just, who knows. But in general, fresh produce is more expensive. And considering the fact that people don't eat enough of it as it is, or don't want to buy enough of it, Ryan, please, I want you to talk a little bit about why just the almost the act of purchasing produce, cooking it, when you could be purchasing something else, why that can add to the whole being cost prohibitive.
Sure. Okay, so produce is a good example of something. So I think you have an issue where, so produce obviously, well, two things. Well, one, it goes bad, right? So there's kind of a time issue with getting produce. Another thing is just in general, low income areas tend to have less fresh produce and less fresh meats and things like like that. That's just a separate issue, but something to bring up. That so often the access to good produce is just not there, and oftentimes in low income areas there's not the access to farmers markets and fully stocked groceries. So you have that potential issue.
And just sorry to interrupt you, and just to add to it, and I'm not taking sides, but that in some locations it's actually very, very difficult to get fresh produce in.
Which I said, so you're not taking sides. But regardless, so the other issue when it comes to that is let's say if you're again lower income, so and that's a lot of my perspective comes from that, because I do think if you're middle income, you're gonna have it's much easier for you to make those better choices, and it's not gonna affect you kind of in a myriad of ways, and it really just requires a sacrifice. But if you're lower income, the problem with fresh produce is there are a number of issues potentially there. One is then it means frequent visits to the grocery, because you can't do one big grocery visit. Generally it's gonna be hard because you're not gonna have the money to do that big visit that's gonna last you for a couple weeks. So that means multiple trips to the grocery, which could be problematic depending on how close you live to the grocery or not. But then there are other issues. Is if you're lower income, you're more likely to be working more jobs for less pay. So then if you in the little time that you do have, does it make sense to then take a side trip multiple times a week to the grocery, or do you just pick up something that's cheap, calorie dense, that the sugar and everything is bad, and it does have long-term effects, but it makes you feel good. And so you're dealing with this again, with issues of kind of depression and anxiety and things that, yes, that candy is not going to make it better, that Snickers bar is not going to make it better, but in a short term, it seems like a better choice than going shopping for a bunch of fresh produce that may or may not, go bad. And especially if you're feeding, it adds up then if you're feeding a bigger family. So you're just trying to make decisions. If I'm feeding a family of 4, I can go and, really stock up on fruits and vegetables.
Right. Different question.
Okay.
Just keep it to produce and the purchasing of produce.
So you can, even if you're shopping for a bigger family, right? Or you can go to the grocery and do a bunch of fresh produce, which is probably going to go bad because kids, no matter their income or station in life, generally don't like fruits and vegetables. Or you can buy, things that are fast, sweet, calorie dense that can go in the cupboard, and if it's there a week later or a month later, it's fine. So I think there are just it does make life easier if you're low income, and it makes like kind of getting produce just cost prohibitive to me.
Okay, so.
Okay, so fresh produce usually, yes, it's more expensive and it goes bad faster, so you're more likely to have food waste. So what I tell people is always buy the produce that's in season, because it tends to be more affordable, and it also won't spoil as quickly. And if you can do local produce, that's always going to be better, because that means it's fresher. The longer it's to say, if you got something that you live in New York, you get something from California, by the time it goes cross country, sits, gets put on the shelf, you take it home, you eat it, yes, it's likely to spoil faster. But if it's something that was, you live in New York and it was picked off the tree in New Jersey, it's probably going to last a little bit longer. So always thinking about that. If you can get something more local, it's going to be better, it's going to be fresher and more affordable. And that's going to be ultimately a good thing to do. In regards to if you're in what's like called a food desert, meaning you have lack of access to that fresh produce, there really is, I understand quality tastes might not be the same between fresh versus frozen or canned, but canned vegetables are just as nutritious as fresh vegetables. Same thing with frozen. If not, sometimes you could even make the argument that they're fresher and they have more nutrient dense because they're picked and frozen or picked and canned right at the time of when they're being pulled, versus, like I just said, sitting on the trucks, getting exposed to the air, washing it, cooking it, all of that over a period of time, it's degrading in the nutrient quality. Both great choices. It's all about flavor and texture. So when it comes to purchasing in bulk and maybe having to make frequent trips to the grocery store, canned vegetables are completely fine. The things you want to look for are things like added salt, or like even canned fruit. You want to make sure it's not in like a heavy syrup, and that it's packed in water. And if something is on sale at that time, take advantage of that. Now, and honestly, I would say that's kind of my main thing. With fresh produce too, I'll say, yes, it spoils fast. So if you get into a good habit, like I help people with building healthy habits. So if you get into the habit of the same day that you go to the grocery store is the same day that you cook and prepare it, then it's less likely to spoil. But if you buy, say, like a cantaloupe is on sale for 97 cents, sometimes that happens. Actually, I think right now cantaloupe's in season. So it's 97 cents to buy cantaloupe, and you buy that cantaloupe, 97 cents a pound, right? Whatever. You buy that cantaloupe and it sits on the counter and you forget about it and you never peel it, cut it, and prep it, of course it's going to go bad and you're going to feel like you're wasting money. Anytime we throw out food, we're throwing out money. But if you get into the habit of when you purchase that food, you cook it and you prep it and you prepare it and it's easily accessible, then you're likely to consume it. What I actually have a lot of my clients do, and me personally, I do this, is because, I don't like to take a lot of trips to the grocery store. I usually go once a week. And if I'm sticking to a budget, or if just in general, I don't feel like I live on a 3rd-story building, and sometimes I don't feel like carrying all the groceries up the stairs. I'm going to be really honest. So I purchase enough fresh produce that it gets me through a couple of days that I know is not going to spoil. And then the second half of the week, that's when I rely on the things that are in my freezer. Sometimes like frozen broccoli, frozen cauliflower, all those things, they go on sale for like $1 or 88 cents, right? I'll stock up on those, use those to supplement my meals at the end of the week, or even like get canned, beets or canned carrots or canned spinach. I just make sure that there's no salt added, and those are great ways to then have kind of the best of both worlds. But if you're really strict on a budget and you can't afford the fresh, or you have lack of access, the canned vegetables and the canned fruit, canned vegetables, frozen, they're just equally as nutritious.
So about that, can we reasonably expect most people to eat lots of canned and or frozen vegetables, considering that they don't taste very good? Because I think that is important, because a lot of people will make decisions based on what tastes good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that there's definitely ways to flavor it and make it taste better, especially like canned fruits. You could mix it and add it to, like, maybe make a soup or add it to a sauce, or there's different ways of seasoning it. Sometimes, like Ryan, you made an argument with kids. Like, kids aren't going to eat fruits and vegetables. So if they eat the broccoli with a little cheese on it, or with like a little bit like light Italian dressing, and that helps them get it down, then that's better than probably the alternative of what they were going to have, right? So there are ways to flavor the food and make it taste a little bit better. Okay. Yeah.
Ryan, I personally believe that taste matters. Do you think that people will wind up purchasing stuff like frozen vegetables, frozen stuff like that, and it winds up just sitting in their cupboard or their freezer, and just that becomes a waste?
Well, sure. I think that's part of the issue.
That's why a little bit of a leading question, but I think it's important.
I was gonna bring that up anyway. So it's why people don't eat healthy in general, right? Is that the palatability of the food is.
But they're also not giving themselves a chance. Sorry, I interrupted. But I mean, but if we're talking about, like, people are used.
All right, Tony, you'll have your rebuttal. Ryan's got to get guys to talk now.
So there's an issue there where, okay, that fair enough. Like, those are great points that it is possible to eat healthy, but there still is an issue of, again, the palatability of it. And yeah, sure, there's all these different ways to prep the food, but you're not accounting for the value of the person's time. And again,
frozen vegetables in a microwave. How much time does that take?
All right, Tone, you'll have your rebuttal.
So again, what sounds better, frozen vegetables in a microwave or McDonald's? Like, at the end of the day, it might sound good a couple times, but variety.
McDonald's isn't healthy, so that's
Tone,
a big comparison.
Come on, Tone, you get your rebuttal.
So there's an issue of the variety of foods. There's the issue of the time that it takes to prep. And yeah, okay, it sounds good. Like, a lot of these things sound good. It sounded great when I decided, all right, I'm going to eat healthy every day and I'm going to buy all this. And it just doesn't, it's not it's easier said than done. And so again, when you're dealing with populations that are high stress and that are overworked and that don't make a lot of money, it's a lot easier to make that quick decision to go to the grocery. To go to get fast food or to make those things that are easy to do. And yeah, I'm sorry, like, throwing whatever frozen vegetables with whatever seasoning in a microwave just does not sound good. I personally, knowing that a Big Mac is way worse for me, I would rather go get a Big Mac. So yeah, it sounds good, but I'm telling you that if you're somebody who, coming from somebody who grew up poor, like, I would hate that if I was a kid and I'm like, oh, here's some canned corn, we'll sprinkle some salt, some cheese on it. Take that. Of course, we don't want to go to get McDonald's. Like,
all right, Ryan. Point taken. Your rebuttal, Tone.
Oh my gosh.
So you allowed Tony to cut me off and you cut me off.
You get a rebuttal.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, if you grow up eating food that's high in fat and high in sugar and high in salt, of course, then healthy food's not going to taste good, right? So initially, yes, there's something you're going to have to get over, and you're going to realize that the flavor's not going to be as great. You can make it more flavorful, but at first, probably not going to be as delicious. But seriously, it's very, very, very possible. I don't know. I don't even know. I think that's the valid point. Obviously, if you're used to eating sugar, you're going to want sugary foods, but there's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term benefit. Like, if you're actually on a budget and you're really saying that you can't eat healthy because it's too expensive, then you really have to look and see where you're spending your money elsewhere. Because that money is not, it's not being, there's no longevity to it. That's what I call an expense. So yes, it's expensive in the sense that, like, it's not like, honestly, I think that eating, quote unquote, and I hate to use this term, but just to simplify it for the listeners, junk food, right? Or here's even a difference, okay? There's food, and then there's things that are not actually food that people are consuming. Like, it's not whole food. So if you're going to spend your money on things that have ingredients that you can't pronounce, it's mostly chemicals, it's highly, highly processed, then it's a waste of money. Versus spending money on the foods that come from the ground, have nutrition, are going to give you a short-term benefit of energy, feeling more confident, dealing with those things like anxiety and depression and high stress, a healthy a diet high in, like, antioxidants. These are all things that are actually going to make you feel better in the moment and also save you money in the long term. Because of, like I said, I think it's pretty obvious that we all know that people who eat healthier live longer, have less medical bills and less health complications. And, like, that's long-term stuff. But the short term, it doesn't make sense to spend money on food that's not real food.
Cool. Your last rebuttal before we move on, right?
I think you're preaching to the choir in a lot of ways. Like, we're on the same page in that. Like, of course, there are many benefits to eating healthy. My point is just that it is prohibitive in a way that makes it very difficult for people. Again, there are a number of issues. There's like that. There's time, which is, again, a big issue. Time going to the grocery to shop for food. Time prepping food, and then it multiplies exponentially if there are kids or a family involved. There's the cost of the food. And even if we agree that the cost isn't that much, there's still a bit of a cost involved. Then there's, again, the taste. Is it something that's palatable? Is it something that I'm going to want to eat? And I know that we both know that the long-term benefits of eating healthy and of exercise and of being active far outweigh whatever short-term gains, but it doesn't change the short-term gains. We both have jobs because people can't control the short-term urges. So that, that's the issue is, you have the kind of mental aspect that it's going to lead people to eating. And then it does, the industry kind of whether it's from a marketing perspective.
Okay, let's not touch on that yet.
But I'm just saying that it is harder to eat healthy, and I think beyond just the cost. Again, there are other issues that are involved that we don't always take into account. And again, it's easy to tell somebody, you know what, take Sunday and prep. But what if Sunday is the one day off and they got to do laundry and they've got to take the kids to whatever they're taking them to, and they got to do this and that and the other. Like there are a lot of things to ask of people, and if you're even and it's not even to say that, like, yeah, if somebody's spending money on like clothes that they shouldn't be spending it on, fine, but that's not even that. We don't even need to get there. Like people, and even if people are spending money on bad foods, it still is easier to spend the money on bad foods and then not have to think about it than to then find that extra time after they get home from a long day of work to then go and prepare food and then deal with this.
Okay. We've heard this before, right?
Okay.
I think that.
All right. No, we're done with this. We're moving on. So the I want to talk about eating out, because that it's something that we all do. It's part of our lifestyles, at least in the United States, and in lots of other countries too. Going out to restaurants is a big social thing, and it's also a great convenience. I'm going to put eating out at restaurants and doing takeout. I'm going to lump them together because socially, and it's convenient. And I know that on a day when I've been up really early and I'm waking up, and then going to work, and I've worked for 10 hours and I'm going home, I'm going to eat out. I'm not going to prepare food. And if I'm going to eat out, the choices of eating healthy or even relatively healthy, even in the same establishment, are there's a big difference. So if I were to get what I would want was like something like a bacon cheeseburger, it's probably going to be comparable. It's going to cost the same as saying getting a salad, a healthy salad with grilled chicken. They would probably be the same price. And I'm looking at them and saying, well, what do I want after this long day of work? And then if I were to eat at a healthier restaurant, like going to one that's really, has very healthy choices, those are generally going to be even more expensive. Restaurants or health food stores. So, Toni, I'm going to let you start with this one. Considering the fact that we are going to eat out, right? And yeah, I know if you're really on a budget that you've got to sacrifice doing that to some extent, but that's a part of our society right now that I don't personally, you guys could tell me if I'm wrong, but assuming that we are going to eat out a decent amount of the time, how can you work that in with with trying to being healthy on a budget?
Okay, well, So I do there. It is true. Like when you go to any restaurant and you want to make like a healthy substitution, say you want to swap the French fries for vegetables, or you want brown rice instead of white rice, there usually is like a plus charge, and it is frustrating, and it does annoy me because it's like, here's someone trying to eat healthier and you're gonna charge them extra just because like they want to eat healthier, which is like, we know that making a salad is a lot less, is like a lot cheaper than it is to make like a steak or whatever, or something like that. But what all, like with that, I would say, you have to really think about, like, what are you paying for? So you're paying for time, right? You've decided that you rather put your money into something than spend the time preparing. So you're enjoying the fact that you now don't have to cook, you don't have to clean up. So you're putting your money there, right? You are either spending your money towards getting something that's going to make you feel sluggish, tired, unmotivated, less productive. If you said get something that's very fried or whatever, or you're going to spend your money on something that's going to make you feel really good, confident about your choices, energized, more productive, and chances are that'll just make you have just a better day. So in my mind, when it comes to dining out to eat, yes, nutrition is like one thing, but I think the other aspects are what you really need to consider is like, how am I going to feel after I eat this? And is this really kind of worth it for me? And if you want to make it stretch, I would probably say, look at the portion. If you need to split it into 2 meals, do 2 meals. How often are you dining out? And so like, we know that you are going to, but like maybe you could save a little bit of money by preparing food from home most often, but if you're making the decision to go out to eat, whether it's a fast food restaurant or a healthy establishment, whatever it is, even fine dining, whichever one, you have to remember that you're choosing to spend more money than it would cost for you to make food at home. Because even if you eat at a fast food restaurant, even if you get from the dollar menu and you have a family of 4, each person, that's at least $4. You can spend $20 in the grocery store is going to go a lot further than that one meal when you're trying to spend it on the whole family. So I think that's really important to consider, is that regardless of where you're choosing, you are making a conscious choice that you're going to spend more money than if you were to prepare it from home, and you are going to save on time. But there's like anything, money is not like the cost of spending is not just in money and dollars and values. It's time and energy and all of those things. And if you're willing to kind of do that, then that's fine. You're going to have to pay for that.
Ryan?
I don't know how much this really is related to the debate, but I would just say I disagree almost completely, unless the eating out is out of necessity. Like if you're eating out because you need to, like for me, I eat out every day. I do, like I've talked about before, Meal Pal, and but like at the end of the day, I work. I'm up out the door I start at 6 o'clock most days. I don't get home till 9:30. There's no way in hell I'm cooking during the day. And really, like, Sunday's my one day off. I'm not cooking on Sundays. Like, that's just, I have too many other things I need to do. And that's the one day where I can get other things done. So, I might, occasionally I'll cook, but it's for pleasure. It's not like to prepare for the week. So, if you're like me and you're eating out of necessity, then fine. That, that's your diet. And so you have to make good choices. You kind of have to force yourself to. And yeah, it does, I think there are challenges there, but I don't think that's hard. Like, I don't think it's cost prohibitive, anymore to, eating out is expensive no matter what. I think the challenge with eating healthy and eating out is that there are just far fewer options. And I know from just examples, kind of anecdotes, but from plenty of people I know, I think the biggest issue I've seen with people eating healthy, eating out, is that they'll say, okay, I got this one place and they've got 10 great things on the menu that are not healthy, and they have 2 things on the menu that are healthy, and their issue is that just boredom, because you only have so many choices. And so I think for many places there are only so many healthy choices. But even so, I'd say, okay, fair enough, you can eat healthy, but I think if I make the choice to go out, the far and away most important thing for me is pleasure. Like, I want a pleasurable dining experience. I want that food to taste amazing. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, how often is really healthy food going to produce the same kind of pleasure as just a good steak, or a good, really good pizza, or you go to a really good French restaurant where just everything is so rich and creamy. Like, at the end of the day, unless you're like, I know some people are like, oh, I'm not a foodie, I can eat whatever, and it doesn't matter. But like, unless you're that person, like, nothing is going to produce the same kind of pleasure as you'll get from something that's unhealthy. And so I think this has nothing really to do with the argument. I just think if you're dining out, like, I'm
dining out is a big part of our of our culture.
So I mean, if I'm dining out to dine out, it's for pleasure. It's not, health doesn't have anything to do with it. But again, if it's out of necessity, or if it's because that's just my lifestyle, yes, you can make those choices.
But then if you're going to make that argument, then and I talk to people about this all the time. Actually, I don't know when this is coming out, but it actually might be perfect timing, because it might be right around when I come out with this video I just recorded, which is all about dining out to eat, exactly that. And budget or not, pleasure, you can get pleasure in eating something that's higher in fat and maybe a little bit creamier, but your chances are you're probably not going to eat the whole thing, because if you eat the whole thing, that short-term pleasure is not going to feel pleasurable later on or the next day. Well, so in that sense, then you're still kind of, because you're chewing a healthy habit by having half of it, that meal is not going to be one meal that you're spending money on. It's going to be 2 meals that you're spending money on.
That's a reasonable concept. All right, so
although it depends on the person. Like, I don't think Justin or I could get away with that.
Yeah, I can't.
But you would. Well,
we are healthy in general, so
you're healthy in general, and also too, like, not everybody. Like, I mean, you guys might be able to finish something like that and then not feel sluggish afterwards. Like, not everybody has those symptoms after. I just know a lot of the clientele that I work with, like, whenever they go out to eat, they always come back feeling like, why the heck did I do that?
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about 2 things. One that Ryan had mentioned and how they're sort of connected. One is a general education of people in this country when it comes to health. Now, we know that in New York, Los Angeles, Austin, Texas, places that we're more aware of what we're eating. But in other parts of the country, they might not have the same level of education. And so when you mix that in with what Ryan was talking about, with how certain foods are that you can feed a family with are a lot less expensive, say like rice or certain types of wheat, things like that, corn. How do you sort of make heads or tails the fact that in sort of less educated areas where there are a lot more, where there's foods that are not quite as healthy that are cheaper and more readily available? How do you balance that with with people trying either being healthy or living eating healthy when they don't have the education and all this other stuff that is not as healthy is very, very available to them? Toni, I'll let you start.
Well, that's a great question. Something I wanted to say earlier when he was talking about that was, it's not so much that is it cost prohibitive or not. It's is this person educated, and do they know what to do with the food and the quality of the food and the benefits? So I think a lot of times it's more about like that they don't have the knowledge to know either how to prepare certain foods or how to cut budgets or like things to do to make it cost effective. So I like one example I say with a lot of people are things like whole grains versus refined grains, right? So brown rice versus white rice, whole wheat bread versus white bread, these foods that, or even whole grain pasta versus white pasta, they might be cost a little bit more, but they're still quote unquote cheap compared to the other things you're purchasing, like the fresh produce or the meat, right? So what I tell people is those foods that are higher in fiber, although they might cost a little bit more, what ends up happening is because of the fiber, you don't need as much of it to consume to feel full and satisfied. And so you actually end up eating less. And I also want to say that if people it's not just about buying more. This is what a lot of people don't forget to do, right? What they think is if I eat healthier foods and I don't remove anything else, then automatically I'll be healthier. But the idea is to take a healthy option and replace something else. So if, for example, if you're continuing to buy soda and eat candy and chips and all that stuff, and now you're also adding fresh fruits and vegetables, then yes, obviously you're spending more money. But instead of having chips in the middle of the day and you have a piece of fruit and you replace it, right? A banana is a lot cheaper than a bag of chips. It's like 44 cents like they're so cheap, right? If we do the math, I think it ends up coming to be like 9 cents if a bunch of bananas, it ends up being like 9 cents each. Right? So like, if we think about it in that way and we use healthy food to replace the less healthy food, then you're going to save money. But if you're doing it you're adding healthy food to the unhealthy food or the less healthy food, then yes, you're spending more money.
All right,
Ryan? So I think education is a big part of it. And I think, unfortunately, it reinforces my argument a little bit because, again, it adds to eating healthy being cost prohibitive, because part of that knowledge is part of what is prohibiting people from eating healthy. The lack of proper nutritional knowledge, and a lot of this information I think is useful, and and somebody who is lower income can take that information and make better choices and possibly make better decisions. But we do have a severe lack, but it's kind of systemic. Like, it's something we're not really taught about that in school. It's not really encouraged. And perhaps
especially in not to be biased, but especially in states in the United States, and I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I know that in certain states like Mississippi, Arizona, where the education systems are very, very bad, that it correlates to the obesity rates.
You're a terrible moderator.
Well, I thought that was an important.
Yeah. No, it is, but
remember, I'm not completely a moderator. I'm a biased moderator. Although I've chosen not to take sides yet.
Okay. I mean, so far it sounds like you're on Ryan's side. Last time you were more on my side.
All right.
This time you were on Ryan's side, so I'll let it slide.
Okay.
But right now I'm not happy.
I thought I've been pretty reasonable.
Yeah, so I think part of the education is an issue. So I think the part of the problem here, and where we're not too far off, like I don't think Toni and I are diametrically opposed, is just that
I disagree.
I think we are. I think I'm so like that.
I think I'll explain it a little bit more when we kind of finish. But I think at the end of the day, like, we severely lack the education and the knowledge necessary. And again, that's why we have jobs.
Why we have jobs.
If
exactly.
everybody kind of knew this stuff, or if they were really taught it, even at a decent level in school, there wouldn't be that need. Because I think you made a good point that a lot of us are. It's built into our childhoods. It's kind of how we eat and how and then once you learn it, it's hard to unlearn that. And even when you do unlearn it, it takes it takes a lot of work to keep it that way. So yeah, I mean, I don't have really much to add to it because I just think if you're not educated on it, it's very hard to make good choices, and it's hard to be equipped with I think even more than making a good choice is just the strategies, the ways to fight the urges and the bad choices. So yeah, I think that reinforces my point a little bit.
I'll just add that water is free.
Tell that to the people in Flint. I guess if we're not talking about the cleanliness, I guess. But
Well,
yeah.
All right, I want to talk about what Ryan sort of mentioned was the food industry. And something that you need to consider is the marketing of food, and sort of what Ryan also mentioned is what's available. So clearly, unhealthy foods are marketed towards children, right? With cereals, even as far as where they're put in the grocery store in the aisles, they're put at eye level. I know there's all sorts of things like that. So. With that being said, with those challenges of the food industry being almost predatory in a way to try to get kids to purchase unhealthy foods, how is someone supposed to, and especially people that don't really necessarily have the education or the energy to fight to go against that with their family, like if their kid is tugging at their buy me Oreo cookies, buy me this unhealthy sugar cereal. Right, a lot of parents may just say, all right, I'm just going to get whatever my kid wants. Yeah. Right. So how are families supposed to fight that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. I'm not a parent. I can't teach you how to parent your child, but I know growing up for me, it was like you get what you get, or you have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like that was it. It was like, this is dinner, or you get PB&J. My choices were milk or water. Soda wasn't an option. Juice wasn't an option. Kool-Aid, iced tea, none of that stuff. Those were occasional treats. Like my parents believed that, there was always a protein, a vegetable. Like that's what I was taught. And so that's eventually, like, that's the only thing you offer your child, then eventually they're going to eat it. I know, and I worked with a lot of parents who have picky eaters as children, and listen, you can't expect your child to eat healthy if you're not eating healthy yourself. So I would always tell people to demonstrate healthy eating behaviors, and I mean, that's kind of totally separate. But so yeah, if someone wants Oreos, it's Oreos or chocolate chip cookies. It's not Oreos, chocolate chip cookies, and Doritos. It's like pick your, but that's, once again, I can't teach you how to parent, but that's a separate issue. But I will say, and it does come back to education, is that unfortunately it's true. Those foods that are marketed as organic or appear to be like heart healthy or made with whole grains, like you said, the sugary cereals, they might be made with whole grains, but they're mostly refined grains, and it's not all whole grain, and they have a lot of added sugar. And so it really does come down once again to that education. And I would just say, if you're unsure, seek out a nutrition expert. You guys know where to find me, but just general websites, eatright.org is a good one. myplate.gov is a good one. These are all places where you can find out like what would be good quality sources of food that I can give to my children or buy for myself that are still affordable, but I don't want to fall into purchasing those foods that appear like they have, like that Health Halo episode I think is really good. A lot of people should listen to that if they haven't yet. And just knowing like it's not, listen, one example I had, this happened to me a couple summers ago, and I feel like I say it because I always think about it, is I'll never forget, I was at a barbecue and my uncle was like, we bought organic lemonade. And I was like, oh, great. Like trying to be excited, like, oh, we have organic lemonade to make our margaritas. So I was like, okay. and I already know that this doesn't make it any healthier. First of all, and if you're buying something organic, things that have a skin there and that you're not going to eat the skin. So lemons, bananas, oranges, you're taking the skin off. So there's really no point in spending your money in something like that to buy organic, because you're not eating the skin, and it's usually the way that it's processed and with certain things that it's made. So there's no reason to go to spend organic on those. But with that being said, the lemonade still had a ton of sugar in it, just like any other sweetened beverage did. So just because it was organic doesn't make it healthier. You're still, even if it was made with organic raw sugar, sugar is sugar. And so that's where there's that education component that really needs to be kind of, yes, the marketing is out there and trying to get your money and trying to get you to spend more. And the organic lemonade versus the regular lemonade is probably going to be $1 or $2 more, which is ridiculous. But you shouldn't be buying sweetened lemonade regardless.
Ryan, do you have to
budget,
say anything on the subject?
Yeah, well, I think again, it kind of it just adds to my point a little bit of that. I think the industry is the cards are stacked up against eating healthy. Just from an economic standpoint, like our economy values volume, and productivity over, like I was talking about this. I was talking about just. There was listening to a podcast, and he was talking about it's a great podcast, and it's called Pitchfork Economics. Highly recommended if you want to learn about the kind of current economic system and learn some different ideas from what you might have learned in school. But the way he put it was that we don't really include morals and ethics in our economics. Like when we talk about economics, like if you take like an economics 101 class, like morals aren't really involved in that. And I think in the same way it's like if you look at the way that food is valued, right? Like it's production, and how much can you make, and at what cost, and so they don't value the moral part. They don't value the healthy aspect of it. There isn't added value to farmers, and working the land and things really coming from the ground. And in fact, there are extra costs added to that. So I think that again, we live in an economic system that makes it easier to produce foods that are high in fat, high in sugar, highly processed, and therefore it makes it cheaper. Therefore, it's going to be easier to access, especially if you don't have money or if you don't have the time, and it's it just makes it really, really easy. So I think from a and then even there are other things that I've looked up where there are certain subsidies for crops like I said earlier, like corn and wheat and things that kind of go into the processed foods where you don't have the same thing for leafy greens. There's not like a lettuce or maybe there probably is a lettuce lobby, but they're not the same kinds of they're not the same kind of benefits of for growing lots and lots and lots of romaine lettuce or whatever, kale or whatever. Although I guess maybe soon there is a massive kale lobby now, but they're just it's more valuable to produce the crappier stuff, which then makes it easier to source, makes it easier for people to buy. So yeah, I think again a lot of my argument is that there's a systemic issue. And then it then becomes an issue of like our, politician. But then there's a question, even like school lunches, people freaked out when they wanted to, make school lunches healthier. Like, don't tell me what to do with my, school lunches. Like, well, if people can't make those decisions, maybe there should be some should be some government intervention on what types of lunches schools can feed kids. So, I think there is, it's just, again, I feel like it just supports the point that it just is harder to eat healthy, and it is cost prohibitive in a lot of situations. And I don't think that, to answer your question about kind of industry, I don't think that makes it any easier. And I think in many ways it makes it harder to eat healthy on a budget.
All right, so I have a question. Do people sort of use the excuse of eating is too expensive to not eat healthy?
They use, basically people will tell me that they don't eat healthy because it's too expensive, and that really gets my blood boiling because I hear two things. I hear one, a big fat excuse, and the other part I do hear is that education component, which I know that I have to not get fired up. I have to calm down my fire. I have to put the water out.
I like to see you fired up.
No, I have to remind myself that they're just not educated about the topic, and because their perception of healthy is continuing to do their habits of going out to eat. And yes, when you go out to eat to get the salad instead of the burger, it's going to be more money, right? Their perception of healthy is they think that organic food makes food healthier, which we know isn't true. Their perception of healthy is getting a cleanse or a juice shake or whatever on the internet and spending money, but that's not technically making them healthy. So from that perspective, I can understand why they feel that way, but it's my job to then educate them so they know that there are, if you take the food that you're currently eating now and swap them for things that are more nutrient dense, have things like more fiber, they're higher quality sources, that you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck. So that's what I think. And what we did with right now, I'm like feeling like this episode needs to go out before anything else, because we just put a poll on the Instagram story. We just did a poll and we asked the viewers if they thought that eating healthy was expensive, and so far everybody is saying yes. And right now I'm really upset, because this means that I need to get onto the story and I need to talk to everyone and kind of show them that no, eating healthy is not expensive, and if it is, you're just telling yourself that, and it just means that you don't value it that much. And you have to really look at what you're putting your money towards and how can we prioritize it and put your money towards the things that matter, which is your health. Because if you're not taking care of you and you're not eating the right healthy food, like everything else in your life is affected. Your mood is affected. Then how you do your job is affected. Then if you get that raise sooner enough, it's affected. How you spend quality times with your children. If you have a sex drive to be with your spouse. Like these are all really, really, really are related to your diet. So we can sit here and pretend that that's not true, but it's 150% true. So if within your budget, you can't make that dollar stretch, like you can. And I actually have a podcast. It's on the Tips with Toni podcast, How to Eat Healthy on a Budget. And I go over at least 7 ways. I'm pretty sure it's more than 7 ways of how you can eat healthy on a budget. So go listen to that episode if you really feel like it's not possible.
So Ryan, do you think it's an excuse?
Yeah, actually, not largely. I agree that for a lot of people, it is an excuse. I think there was a Harvard study that was kind of a meta-analysis of a number of different studies on the cost of food. And what it came up to is basically that eating healthy is about $1.50 more than not eating healthy. So it is mostly nominal. I think if you can't afford the $1.50 a day, there may be other issues. Now, like we've talked about in a lot of this debate, I've said there are issues more than just the cost. So I think from a cost perspective, though, yes, it's not that hard to eat, healthy on a budget. So I think if you're somebody who just uses that excuse, like let's say you have the time to cook, or maybe you do cook and you just make unhealthy meals, or you have more than enough money and you eat out a lot, or whatever the case is, I think that there are some, there are going to be some people who, eating, it is an excuse and it's an easy way to say, oh yeah, it's just expensive. And if you ask them how much more money you think it is, they might come up with a number like, oh, it's $20 more a day or something like that. And that's just ridiculous. So, I largely agree that for some people, look, we want the path of least resistance. And if I don't want to eat healthy, it's a really nice, easy excuse for me to say, oh, I'd love to eat healthy, but it's just too expensive. Maybe I walk in the aisles at anywhere, you go to, why am I forgetting? Whole Foods. And you can find really super expensive stuff at Whole Foods. So if you just focus on that, well, a better example is Starbucks.
Well, don't go to Whole Foods and don't go to Starbucks.
Well, I'm actually using it. I'm using it as an example. Like people always joke about, oh, I'm going to go get a $6 coffee at Starbucks. And yeah, sure. If you get like a venti latte, venti like caramel macchiato with an extra shot, sure, that's going to be $6. But if you just get a regular drip coffee, you could spend $2 on a coffee. So it's really perspective. And so yeah, if your thought of expensive coffee is you immediately go to the $6, that's different. So even if you go to Whole Foods, you might be able to shop reasonably at Whole Foods. So my point is,
you don't have to shop at Whole Foods. Like I don't shop at Whole Foods, and I'm a health nut. I don't shop at Whole Foods because I think it's ridiculous when I know that I can shop at Trader Joe's or ShopRite, get healthy food quality, and not have to spend twice the amount of money just because it's from Whole Foods.
So I was actually trying to reinforce your point, though, that
the Whole Foods has cut their produce.
If you're somebody,
it's a lot more reasonable now.
Really? Since when?
Yeah, pretty
since
recently.
Amazon is trying to.
It's more reasonable. Yeah.
So, look, the point being, yeah, it's really easy to use that as an excuse. So I think if you're somebody who's using that as an excuse, then sure, by all means. I just do think that there are aspects of both the industry and our kind of socioeconomic system that does make healthy eating a challenge. And I don't think it's unfair. I mean, I think it's unfair not to acknowledge that and to make it sound as if it's just as easy as making choices. Because sometimes there are a myriad of other issues that we need to get to in order to help to make those choices. Right. And obviously being educated helps. And obviously, there are many other, many things we've talked about that could make it better. But I just think that, yes, it is cost prohibitive, if you're not that person who's just sitting down just using it as an excuse.
All right. So for people that are listening to the GymWits that want to learn more, maybe they're just getting into health and fitness, and maybe they don't have the same level of education. Why we got into this podcast is not to just fight amongst ourselves, even though it is entertaining, but actually to help people. So both of you guys, and I know you've mentioned this before, let's once again just discuss some resources that on the education side can help people. If you're like, I'm confused, right? I need some good scientific, unbiased information. What are the resources you guys like? I know you guys mentioned them a million times, but let's just mention them again.
Myplate.gov is good. Eatright.org is good. Today's Dietitian's a little bit more scientific. Not that. If you just want like general knowledge, those sources I just named are good. And honestly, guys, like my Facebook group, I mean, I have people from all different backgrounds. They're asking questions all the time. I do a live Q&A every Friday. And although you might think this is biased, I'm not biased. As a dietitian, I really do look at all the research, and I work with people on an individual level, so I individualize everything to them. So I know it might appear that way, but I have the best interest at heart for everybody that I talk to, everybody that I work with, and I would never misguide or mislead them. I understand that sometimes we have different priorities, and we might not be able to go, full-fledged with our health and our nutrition, but there are little things that you can do that can make you a little bit healthier and also save you money. Not only will it be cost effective, but it'll actually can save you money. And like I said, that podcast that I have about healthy eating on a budget, it is a really good podcast. And I'm like, there's so many things that you can do to save money and still eat healthy.
And just so that you guys know, Toni has the sad eyes right now.
I am so frustrated.
I don't like seeing Toni having the sad eyes. It makes me sad.
No, but also though, do you guys notice? I woke up this morning and like my eye is very puffy. I took Claritin. Also, never take 2 Claritin because mine were expired. So I thought if I take 2, that'll work. Yeah. But I don't think it's working.
All right, Ryan, are there any resources that you want to add?
I mean, not for food. I think Toni's got it. I think that the best thing you can always do is talk to somebody who can guide you in a way that kind of specific to your needs. So I think the Facebook group is probably the best bet, because you have somebody who will respond to you and give you good information. So regardless of the debate, obviously Toni's extremely knowledgeable and a great resource. And I do think that, it helps for anybody to look up ways to eat healthy on a budget. And it's a good start. So, So
sort of to close, I'm not going to choose a winner here, because Ryan's whole big thing is not necessarily on the individual level, but more as a systemic issue, where basically the cards are stacked against us as far as everything is concerned. Basically, our education growing up, marketing, food accessibility, food industry, things like that. So, and I think that Ryan has a good point, and I don't think you could really argue that the cards are stacked against us.
No,
but
I agree.
I think Toni has some great points that if you are willing to, you're going to have to make some sacrifices, right? So you can't change your lifestyle to a healthier lifestyle without making some sacrifices. So if you're unwilling to do that, there's nothing that can be done, right? So you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And with that, keeping that in mind, there are many great ways to be healthier while watching your dollar, while watching the budget. And so in that way, I'm definitely going to agree with Toni as well. Would you guys like to any last discussion points?
No, thanks for the closing statement. That was pretty much sums it up. No, I think I'll just say that
I like how Ryan's holding the club now.
How? So Yeah, that's why I think we're on the same page. I think it's just a different, I'm looking at it from more of a systemic, it's a systemic issue, and it's just a little more pragmatic, and maybe a bit more of a nihilist about it, I guess. And I think Toni, and you can correct me, but is from more of an idealist kind of perspective, and more of like she wants what the world should be, which I want as well, but I think sometimes you kind of have to deal with the way the world is, and once you kind of can identify that, then you can work out the solutions, but that's all all I have to add. I've spoken a lot today.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing that though, like that everything's stacked against us. Like I do believe it is difficult and it is challenging, but I really do think that there's either an excuse there or lack of education there. And that's my duty, to educate the people and to remove those excuses so they can come onto the other side, a better, higher quality, healthier, happier life side, where even if it's $1.50 more a day, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Nice. And Ryan, there's always room for God in your life, so just keep that in consideration.
Where did that come from?
All right. So close this up, Ryan.
Sure. All of our stuff is at thegymwits.com. Email us, review us.
Should we put the group in the? Do we ever put the group in the show notes? I know we do it for Tips with Toni, but should we put it in? But technically, it's my group, not yours.
The Facebook group. Yeah, I can definitely add that to the show notes.
But maybe just for this episode.
Yeah. No, definitely. We can add it to the show notes. And
I think we have to post this one soon, based on based on the poll.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. And it's tax season. So what are you doing with your tax return if you're getting money back?
Well, what do people do? The first thing, I'm going to go to a great meal.
Well, no, they do that, and then they don't. That's what. But seriously though, like, listen, if you're not serious about your nutrition, then this conversation is mute, right?
Yeah.
But if you're serious about your health and you want to do something with it, like, really look and see where your money's going.
Yeah. No,
is there a return on that investment?
Oh, I don't disagree. All right. Well,
getting a little happier. My eyes are getting up.
I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
And I'm Toni Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Toni, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the
GymWits.
GymWits.